Larry, viewers have crowdsourced the truth, and people who follow your work at freedomwatchusa.org, we've all known for years that the Democrats and the anti-Trump crowd are just making nonsense up. But have you ever seen such a blatant, naked abuse? This banning people, preventing the New York Post evidence from getting onto Twitter. What do you make of all this?
No, it's a evolution, or a devolution, I should say, of our society. Our society has become nearly totally corrupt, dishonest, amoral, immoral, lawless, and people think they can get away with anything. Of course, it's unbelievable, but it's the world we live in. And it's why, whether you're talking about government or this country is at an all-time low. You know, it was John Adams. I've said this many times, Jason. He said, you can change your rulers and forms of government many times, but if you don't have ethics, morality, and religion, you will not have a lasting liberty. And that's why we're on the edge of everything right now.
Yeah.
And that applies to both sides. You can't believe a word the government says. I've often said the only thing the left and right have in common is that we don't believe a word the government says. And now we're talking about social media. That makes it even worse.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot for us to talk about. They've been talking about changes potentially to this Communications Decency Act, Section 230 in response. I mean, it really seems like a knee-jerk response to what's going on with Twitter blocking this evidence from the New York Post. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about evidence, but you, just before we came on here, you brought something to my attention that apparently has been around for quite a while. The Daily Beast had this story about Borat, Sacha Baron Cohen, individual you've tangled with, trying to catch Rudy Giuliani in some kind of comedy scheme that now has metamorphosized into a political scheme. What's up with this, Larry?
Well, I read it this afternoon myself. I read it in The Guardian. I'm sure it's everywhere by now. All the leftist hacks are on it. But Giuliani apparently was punked, for lack of a better word. He was interviewed, quote unquote, by a young woman. She invited him to her room, apparently, and he got on the bed, according to the report. And, what the implication is, I don't know whether this happened or not. Probably didn't. It's probably a lie. But they're implying that he fondled himself in front of her, and that Borat then runs in the room in lingerie and says, she's 15, take me, don't take her. And that's, that's typical Sacha Baron Cohen. Of course, I have a lawsuit for Chief Justice Roy Moore against him, which is going forward, for branding him a pedophile. I mean, the guy, is out of control, for lack of a better word. And this may have been a setup for Giuliani. They knew this was coming, and right. They set him up, and they're going to maintain that he's some kind of a pervert or whatever. That's what they do. The irony, of course, is that I've got discovery out now against Sacha Baron Cohen, asking whether he's ever been accused of being a pervert. And it wouldn't surprise me, what comes back.
We've seen him do some fairly perverted stuff in his own movies. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this, Larry, is because, there's a lot of, it seems kind of like fluff, but then again, there's a lot of relevant aspects to it, because I looked into it a little bit further. Some of the photos that they plan to release are available online. It's amazing how many ads are all over everything here. But this is the Daily Mail, another British tabloid publishing it. And here are the photos. Now, they've deliberately, I think we're at a point in time where even like $100 cell phone is giving you high definition, 4K video. But they've chosen to decimate this photo in such a way that at first glance, the girl appears perhaps naked, scantily dressed, hovering over Giuliani, doing something that looks very suggestive. I've listened to, well, let me play this for you and the audience so people can hear it. This is Rudy Giuliani's response.
Their country. I mean, they'll do anything. They've attacked me over everything possible, investigated every business dealing I ever had. And now the idiot Borat is going after me with a totally sensationalized, false account of a ridiculous movie, I guess, that he's done. Now, let me tell you why I know this is a hit job that happens, because it's not an accident that it happens. when I turn in all this evidence on their prince and darling, Joe Biden, who's one of the biggest crooks in the last 30 years. And since I have the courage to say that, I'm the target. So this movie that Borat has, I mean, already it's been a subject of an article in the papers when it happened, because I reported it to the police immediately. He didn't, which will tell you who was right and who was wrong. Second, this movie was shown to all sorts of people in Hollywood back in July and August. Now, everybody in Hollywood hates me, you know, right? I'm a devil in Hollywood. Nothing about me comes out in that period of time. Nothing sensational about me in the movie. Now, all of a sudden, there's all this sensational stuff about me in the movie. Don't know if it was added, doctored, manipulated, whatever. Let me tell you what happened. I went to an interview.
People can go and listen to that separately, Larry, but what Rudy Giuliani tells us in that explanation is that he was actually taking off the microphone. Now, you and I have done many in-person interviews. I run a microphone down your shirt. Sometimes the transmitter is strapped to the back of your belt. This woman is helping him remove a microphone, and what he tells us is that his shirt got pulled out of his pants, so he temporarily leaned back to tuck his shirt back in, and they just pulled this clip from a video sequence where he does nothing but lean back and tuck his shirt in. And Larry, you and I have both been victims of smear campaigns like this, where a tiny little piece of evidence is taken and misrepresented. What do you think about that?
No, I mean, he's probably telling the truth, I'm sure, although it is somewhat troubling that he's calling Sacha Baron Cohen Borat. I mean, does he who's behind it? I mean, Rudy's been known to take a few drinks every now and then, and, you know, maybe he was a bit inebriated or whatever, passed out. I don't know. But I doubt that he fondled himself in front of this woman. It's a setup. It's meant to destroy more of his credibility, as he pointed out. And I'm fairly certain it's probably a setup.
And the underhanded aspect of it is this incident was originally in the news this year, July 7th, months ago, and now today, when Rudy Giuliani is releasing all of this really important evidence about Hunter Biden, this thing comes out. But I want to talk to you for... What's that?
Before you get on to that, because I want to make this point.
Yeah.
It's delicious. It's divine justice, okay? Is that years ago, in 2014, when I got the preliminary injunction, the first time I got two against Obama's NSA for the mass surveillance. The injunction means order that they stop this mass surveillance. I was invited on CNN and by Don Lemon, of all people, who the president rightly called the dumbest person on cable news. And Subin was on there as well. And rather than talking about the great victory against the NSA, and of course the left, you know, was in fact an ally on this, you know, the ACLU and others, about what was going on. We won, they didn't. But Tubin then starts to attack me after Lemon attacks me. And he says, I don't have the intellect to win the case ultimately, and that I wear a tinfoil hat, and it's a shame it's Larry Klayman. And I push back. And you can find that interview on the internet, okay, on Google, of all places. It got the #1 rating for the most combative interview of the year in 2014. But to make a long story short, just the other day, Jeffrey Toobin got his just deserves. It was revealed that on a Zoom call, he got caught masturbating, okay? And so, you know, there's somebody who actually did something that was rather bizarre, for lack of a better point. And I have to laugh. I was going to send him an email. This is a little bit off color for people who, you know, don't want to listen to it. But I was going to say, Jeffrey, I'm at least glad to know that you had a dick. I don't think you did. I didn't think you did.
Wow. I hope we don't get banned from YouTube again, Larry. But wow, look at how Don Lemon looks like he would be in a boy band in that video. This is from 2013. And maybe the last time people will see you on CNN, right?
Yeah, it was the last time people saw me on CNN. And it comes after me, and this idiot Brad Blakesman, who's this Republican establishment hack who I sued when he started this group called Freedom's Watch, that was the front for George W. Bush and General Petraeus. He's had a grudge ever since because they stole my alleged trademark at the time. They gave up after W lost. So Freedom Watch has that trademark again, but I brought a lawsuit against them. So all of them were teaming up on me. It's a fairly funny interview if you actually watch it. It's entertaining, not as entertaining as Sacha Baron Cohen's interview of Borat. And I have to say, Cohen is a despicable human being, and that's why I sued him for Judge Roy Moore. He'll go to any lengths, and apparently, he was used here by the left. That's probably what happened.
Well, that's what I want to ask you. Was he used, or is he a political operative? I mean, this is essentially a sting. They're now trying to use this information to make it appear that Rudy Giuliani has behaved inappropriately with an underage girl. I hope Rudy Giuliani sues him, because they're manipulating facts to smear his reputation, aren't they?
He should sue them. And, it's got to be clear cut. Rudy Giuliani is a public figure. It's tough to break through that. When you call somebody a pedophile, such as Chief Justice Roy Moore, that's a much stronger case. And Moore was very smart, because he was invited to Washington, D.C. to get a so-called award from Israel. He's a big supporter of Israel. He's evangelical. He loves Israel. He went there with his wife, Kayla, and he thought something could possibly happen. He got an inkling. And when they gave him a release, he crossed out anything about sexual content. And Sacha Baron Cohen's people signed that. So they then violated that as well, the release. And it was clearly defamatory. We put them on notice to retract it. They didn't. They published it anyway. So it's a very extreme circumstance. But Rudy may have a harder time, if he brings a lawsuit. But he should do it on principle in any event, because this is a setup, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, it's unbelievable what Sacha Baron Cohen is able to get away with. I mean, it's one thing to do it for a movie, but when it crosses over into the world of politics, I mean, what about bringing him up on election interference charges? We've heard now from this ridiculous FBI press conference that they've now decided that Russia and Iran are trying to influence the election. It seems like the biggest influence is coming from Twitter, trying to suppress this actual information about Hunter Biden's laptop.
Well, let's get to the crux of it, okay? I'll promote my new book, too, at the same time, Jason. It takes a revolution. Forget the scandal industry. Every aspect of the government is crooked. It's dishonest. It's corrupt. And the federal judges are the worst, because they're there to protect, but they got there by virtue of campaign contributions and largesse, by special interest groups that got them their jobs. And whether you're an Obama or Clinton appointee or a Bush appointee or now a Trump appointee, they're not protecting the American people. We're left defenseless. And it was Thomas Jefferson, and I dedicated the book to him, who said that we shouldn't have federal judges because they're not elected, and they're not accountable to the people. And they think they're there for life. They're really not. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives them life tenure. And they gave themselves immunity. The Supreme Court gave itself immunity and gave the lower court judges immunity as well. And that's why all this stuff goes on, because there's no accountability in the courts to speak of. And, I often said, and my book's very candid, is that I've scratched the surface in my career. I've had major victories, but not enough. And we now need to try something else. And that's why it takes a revolution. And that's why I say turn off cable news, turn off Hannity, turn off CNN, turn off MSNBC, get up off the couch and, bring this country back to the vision of our founding fathers. And I have concrete ways to do that, including citizens' grand juries, which you know all about, which you participated in last year. And you can get the book at Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. It's different, and the other books that are out there, like Hannity, which basically is his monologue, Live Free or Die. I call it Live Free or Lie. And it just says, vote for Donald Trump. All will be solved. Just keep watching my show and vote for Trump, and everything will be fine. Fitton has a book out there now for Judicial Watch, and I suspect all it basically is a rehash of what's happened in the 4 years. But we can't just sit back and be entertained by what went on. And those books are not going to influence the election anyway, because people have already made up their mind on how they're going to vote. And, we know what went on. We know what the deep state did to Trump. We know how it tried to destroy him, and did destroy him in large part. That's why he's running behind Biden right now. I mean, they beat up on the guy continuously. I tried to defend him. I tried to do my best. I tried to help Giuliani, as a matter of fact. And, to be honest, Giuliani screwed around for 3 years before, anything happened. I mean, now he's doing something. We'll see, whether what he does, if what he's doing stands up or not. But, they should have taken these people out early. And you've got our attorney general who's worthless. So that's where it is. And last but not least, and I'll let you have your show back, is that we see now that not only is Comey not indicted, not only is McCabe and the Lovebirds and Bruce Orr and Clapper and Brennan, and of course the Attorney General Bill Barr, I call him Blowhard Bill, has declared the Bidens and the Obamas and Clintons off limits. And now, of course, we find out John Durham's not even issuing a report up there in Connecticut. God knows what he's been doing. And on top of that, the unmasking now, the Attorney General says wasn't a crime. So I've suggested to the president, I said, fire Barr, fire the FBI Director Wray, by the way, who sat on the Hunter Biden computer for over a year, and appoint me as Attorney General, interim Attorney General. I won't have to be confirmed, and I'll get the job done in 24 hours. I'll have them all indicted, and let's try them, and let's convict them. Forget about Bill Barr. I mean, the guy's a loser. I mean, that's what he is, and he's protecting himself. That's what it's about. He did good when he stopped the Mueller investigation, but he's done nothing else since. And this case now against social media, that's too little, too late. It doesn't seek to break up Google. They should be seeking to break it up. He brought that to take the monkey off his back because he knows how angry people are. He's done nothing about the rampant criminality of the Bidens, the Clintons, and everybody else. And that's what it's all about. It's a giant charade in Washington, D.C. The people are fed up. If Thomas Jefferson was alive today with the Founding Fathers, they'd be waging another violent revolution. I'm suggesting a peaceful and legal one. I don't want to see violence. But if we don't arrest it now, it's going to get violent. And it could get violent in and around Election Day when no one knows who won. You're going to have the leftists running through the streets, burning, looting, maiming, and killing. And the president, unfortunately, has not taken strong action in that regard, nor has he taken strong action with regard to China, the destruction they've done on this country, because he's getting bad advice and he's listening to it from people he hires off of Fox News, of all places. So, I've got a lot to say in this book. I mean, it's a burner. It just basically takes everything down to ground zero, takes a revolution, forget the scandal industry, turn it off and says, we have to wage a second American revolution. Here's what we've got to have to do to try to do it peacefully, because if not, all hell's going to break loose. And I'm not going to advocate that, but it's going to happen.
Yeah. And, Larry, you and I, since the beginning, have been talking about the really troubling past. William Barr, even at his own confirmation, he said he was the outside counsel for the CIA. That means he's a lawyer for the CIA. He's pictured here, 20, 30 years ago, smiling, laughing with Dumb Joe. Why would Donald Trump ever think that William Barr was going to do anything? And what do you think about him now saying that Barr must act?
Well, whether you think that CIA does good things or not, they've done many bad things. In fact, you can read about it in my book. Most people think they had John F. Kennedy hit because they thought he was weak on communism after the Bay of Pigs and after, we settled the Cuban Missile Crisis by taking our nuclear missiles out of Turkey and promised never to try to depose Castro. CIA's done a lot of bad things, and it's the agency. And of course, if you're in the spy world, you have to be deceptive. You have to get the information as you can get it. But to be general counsel of the CIA is to defend people who constantly lie, sometimes for good reasons and other times for bad reasons. And Washington is a case study in liars. I mean, that's what it is. You can't believe a word that you hear or anything that people say. And of course, now you've got the Biden thing, and nothing will happen there, Jason. I mean, it's just a lot of smoke and mirrors. Nothing's going to happen. Nobody's going to go to prison. Nobody's going to go to jail. Blowhard Bill has declared the Bidens off limits. So, and the thing is, it's not even going to win the election for the president, unfortunately, because what's going to win it for him is to stay on point and to talk about how this country is being turned into a communist state. Talk about how these people are going to allow these domestic terrorists, these leftist terrorists, to destroy your neighborhood and to take possession of your house and harm your loved ones. That's what he's got to stick on right now. This thing with Biden's good. I mean, let it fill the airwaves, but do not expect justice coming out of this Justice Department And you and I will do a citizens grand jury again, and we'll indict Biden. We'll let the people take care of him peacefully and legally. But it's not going to happen from the Justice Department.
Well, let me ask you this, because there are possible indicators that perhaps Donald Trump was giving William Barr all the rope he could give him. And when he announced he wasn't going to do anything with Durham and all that, perhaps he pivoted to Rudy Giuliani. We've heard and seen evidence of a grand jury being impaneled in the District of Delaware. This is a subpoena, a grand jury subpoena for the laptop from that computer repair store. So this was issued December 9th, 2019. Does this fill any blanks for us, Larry? Like, was there a grand jury investigating this? The FBI had the laptop. What do you think of this subpoena?
I'll tell you what I think that's about. Okay, who do you think is close with the U.S. Attorney in Delaware? Most likely, the Biden family. Yeah, what they are doing, I'm just hypothesizing based on my knowledge, 44 years as a lawyer, being a Justice Department lawyer myself, living in the swamp. Unfortunately, I don't live there anymore. But I think this is a type of a threat against Giuliani, that he somehow procured this laptop illegally in a criminal way. And I think it's to beat him back. That's what I think it's about. And we'll see. But it's not going to happen fast enough for the election in any event.
But did Giuliani even have the laptop in December?
I don't know. Nobody knows. But I take it as a threat against Giuliani rather than they're actually seeking the truth. There's no way they're going to seek the truth. And why is that, Jason? We know because the deep state intel agencies, and I write about this in my book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. They have dirt on everybody. It's mutual assured destruction. Barr will not push too hard, no more than Sessions would push too hard. They had him wiretapped, when he was on the transition and the campaign for Trump. They're not going to push too hard because they don't want the blowback on themselves. So what do? They make statements. They go on Fox News. They get Hannity to say something's going to happen when it's not going to happen, or people like that, and nothing ever happens. I mean, I told you from the day one nothing was going to happen here. I've seen it over and over and over again. They burned some lower level official. We didn't even know his name. He's not even official. He's a functionary who allegedly doctored, the affidavit.
FBI lawyer, Kleinsmith.
Yeah, that's what they do. They burn those people, and they'll let him go too because, they know that they're burning him at the stake. So, he'll do some minor time or whatever, probation or whatever the case may be. But it's a total sham in Washington. And I'm sitting on top of it are these corrupt federal judges who are bought and paid for. I mean, one of them, and I talk about it in my book, paid $500,000 to get his judgeship. Buddy Sheldon White House in Rhode Island, a mafia state, a mafia-connected state. Okay, I got a judge in D.C. that had cases where I sued the D.C. bar. A bomb appointee paid $38,000 for, and he comes from WilmerHale, and they bundled more money to get him on the bench. And then they got a Republican judge on the bench as well with Trump, with more money. Okay, so don't think it's just the Democrats. Is that these judges that take the bench are bought and paid for on both sides, and that's why when you go into court, if you have a political type case, you can gauge with almost exact certainty how they're going to rule based upon who appointed them to the bench. And President Trump was absolutely right when this clown out there in Oakland, John Tiger, the son of Michael Tiger, an avowed communist who was fired by William Brennan, Justice Brennan, years ago. He sat on a bar committee with me and recommended 33 months suspension, which I'm contesting. I'm confident I'm going to win in the end. It won't affect me, in terms of my practice, but because it's so flawed and so cooked, the decision, which was based upon how many times I sued Hillary Clinton in my life, if you can believe that, was the mainstay of it, is that it's become so political that these judges, you can gauge with exactitude how they're going to rule. And the president was right when he attacked John Tiger and said, well, what do you expect from an Obama judge? What happens then? The Chief Justice, who's shown his closeted stripes, as a leftist, came out and said, oh, no, and went after the president and said, we don't have Obama judges. We don't have Clinton judges. We don't have Bush judges. They're all neutral. Well, what world does he live in? you know, you know, Planet Hollywood, I guess, because now he's a leftist. Okay, we don't have a 5-4 majority anymore. And just a few days ago, he rubber stamped with the leftists on the court, allowing Pennsylvania to mess around with ballots 3 days after the election, hoping that Trump would lose. He hates Trump. He hates Trump. You know, he's a complete hack. And this is the justice of the Supreme Court. What a disgrace.
What do you think the implications of that are going to be, Larry? Your home state of Pennsylvania. It's a swing state, isn't it?
Well, look, I'm praying. I mean, I hope that God steps in. But, you know, another theme of my book, and I hope President Trump wins. I personally support him. I've done everything I can to try to help him in the last 4 years, you know, legally and ethically. But whoever wins, it's not going to stop the downslide in this country. It'll maybe arrest it a little bit for 4 years. But it's very likely that the Republicans will lose control of the Senate and they won't be able to retain control or regain control of the House. And the president won't be able to do much in any event. He'll be blocked every step of the way. But as of right now, Jason, it's a long shot that the president wins because, unfortunately, you know, his Twitter attacks, which I don't always disagree with, I understand why he does them. I feel the same way sometimes, so I don't do that. Has alienated a lot of the 20% in the middle that voted for him, and women have turned off, and elderly people have turned off. And I hope that God will help him pull it out. And I think the one thing that's maybe helping him in the last few days after that first debate, which did not go well, is the fact that people are getting so fed up with COVID-19 that they now understand why he didn't wear a mask and why he went out, you know, with supporters. And now even Kamala Harris, her staff's got COVID-19. So I don't think that's going to hurt him as much as it would have appeared a week ago, these allegations that he's been negligent with regard to COVID-19, because people are about ready to throw Gavin Newsom, you know, in the Pacific, right, in California, and other governors. You know, there were people out in Michigan apparently wanted to send her out in a boat in the middle of Lake Michigan.
That, I think, was a hoax, Larry. I mean, with all due respect, I think you might be so deeply entrenched in the Communist Republic of California that some of these, you know, ideas by osmosis are kind of permeating your brain, because I really feel like a lot of people, despite Twitter suppressing this information and despite everybody on the news lying about it, I think a lot of people realize there's something very wrong with this laptop. And just going back to your home city of Philadelphia for a moment.
Yeah, I'm not entrenched in California. I'm a citizen of Florida, but I spend time out here, you know, and know what goes on. And this is, I mean, it is a communist state at this point. There's no question about it. But the computer, this aspect of the computer, and what went on in social media and everything else, you know, it's the Democrats are pushing back, and they themselves are doing a misinformation campaign. But as far as the governors are concerned and the mayors, people are, you know, figuratively speaking, ready to lynch them. There were, I was out in Beverly Hills a few weeks ago, and people were going through the streets, leftists, saying, get rid of Gavin Newsom. They're sick of it. So maybe that'll help the president, you know, in the short term. And maybe it will help him win the election. I hope he does.
And a lighthearted point here, one of our viewers, Thomas Busey, in the comments suggests that Kamala may have MERS. I think that's a camel joke. But I want to go back for a moment to your home state and city of Philadelphia, where our mutually least favorite dope was just giving a presentation on behalf of Joe Biden. Barack Obama said a lot of really stupid things, including supporting that ridiculous, what now appears to be a hoax that was brought about to make Trump look foolish, where the Daily Beast had a story about this falconer that Trump had retweeted, and Obama referenced this. It's amazing to me, Larry, how the Daily Beast, a pure, you know, garbage pile website, this is a social engineering piece of nonsense. I don't understand why anybody thinks this is news, but it's been connected previously to Newsweek, and this is a social engineering site that leftists and maniacs who work at Interactive Corporation are using to launch fake stories to try to put them into the mainstream and smear Trump.
Yeah, I mean, look, backing up to Barack Obama, the worst president of my lifetime. We've had some really bad ones, from Lyndon Johnson, who killed 55,000 people for no reason in Vietnam, hundreds of thousands maimed, to Jimmy Carter, who was an absolute disaster and gave us the Ayatollahs in Iran, to Clinton, who committed 40 scandals and allowed Osama bin Laden to build up while he was messing around with interns, to George W. Bush, who was a complete moron, who gave us Barack Obama. And then, of course, Barack Obama, who I think gets the prize. He's the one that has triggered this race war and divided the country. He's really just an evil, evil, evil person. And he's responsible for a lot of what's going on today.
I agree. I think he's, carrying out the plans of the Weather Underground. They want to turn the United States into a socialist country with them sitting at the top with all the money. You have done a lot of work with Jack Cashel. You've appeared on the show before with Jack. He's a great guy, excellent author, done a ton of research into Barack Obama. And it's amazing how I guess they figure they can do the same thing they've always done, Larry, by just saying that this is a lie and papering over it and just coming up with crap. If people knew what Bill Ayers and the Weather Underground were all about and the incredibly pivotal role him and his wife had in Barack and Michelle Obama ascending to power, they might think differently about it.
Well, they would. Unfortunately, the American people are not very well educated. And that's why I wrote my book. It takes a revolution, forget the scandal industry. It was the printing press in the years leading up to 1776 that coalesced the colonies, that caused them to rebel against the crown and to form a new nation. And we've got to educate. Our kids are coming up with a socialist communist ideology. Even Jewish kids, you and I are Jewish. I'm a Jewish Christian. I'm Messianic. Very proud of my Jewish heritage. Even the Jewish kids coming out of university today hate Israel and they favor the Palestinians. It's a brainwashing. It's a leftist brainwashing. And that's why, we have to push back. And that's why we cannot allow this country to be taken over by these radical leftists of all colors, creeds, religions, and ethnicities. It's terrible, and our own people, Jason, the Jewish left, of which, by the way, Jeffrey Toobin is a card-carrying member, they're very, very destructive people. They're destructive of the Jewish people as well. And they foment anti-Semitism, both in terms of their own anti-Semitism and by people seeing what they're doing and blaming Jewish people for what they're doing. So it's a great embarrassment to me. And it's something which really sticks in my craw that these people, I would say, probably 60, 70, 80% of the people that are attacking Trump, okay, and want to destroy him are from the Jewish left. It's disgusting.
Now, Larry, this is interesting because, I keyed in on what you just said about the American public not being that well educated. There are many people who aren't, and there are many people who are. I think a bigger problem is that we're being bombarded by social engineering, whether it's on the internet, through social media, through malicious trolls, or even in the mainstream news. I've been looking for some evidence of this Jeffrey Toobin flashing situation. And I initially thought this was that. But as it turns out, it's quite easy to tell that this is just Jeffrey Toobin's face digitally pasted. We can see that the font being used for his name is different than the font for the other people participating in this Zoom call. So this quite clearly looks like a doctored thing. I mean, there's no doubt that Jeffrey Toobin has done this thing. It's unclear if he just appeared naked or if he was actually engaging in some inappropriate act. But I want people to be really careful how they scrutinize evidence. A lot of people present crap and think it's evidence just because it's a document or a recording of something. I want to talk about evidence for a second, Larry, and I want to take you back to the...
He didn't deny it, Jason.
No, he didn't deny it. But that particular picture that I just showed fooled me into thinking it was evidence of him on a Zoom call. And then there's another image of that same panel with a naked guy who looked a lot fatter than Jeffrey Toobin. And I've been seeing it go around the internet. I'm not saying the guy should be defended. Let me rephrase that. He should be defended if he hasn't done what's depicted in that photo. I just don't like people falsely accusing people of stuff.
I agree, and there's also mentality out there to lynch a man. I mean, that's the fact. Men are not equal when things happen; they get lynched. Okay, and so I have some sympathy for the guy, other than the fact that he's despicable, and other than the fact that he's a liar. And but I knew he was a jerk, but I never thought he'd get caught jerking off. Let's put it that way.
Right. Well, so someone's saying, oh, come on, it's obvious that that was satire. No, that's not obvious, because a lot of people see stuff like that and they don't know that it's satire. And it's also, see, okay, you put it out there, it's satire, it dilutes the whole story. I want to just focus on evidence for a second, Larry, because one of the things I would really like for people to benefit from watching Crowdsource the Truth is to make themselves a little bit smarter, a little bit more discerning. So here are two pieces of evidence, and this is going to really cross over into where we need your legal expertise. This is internet evidence. In terms of court, this is hearsay. It hasn't been verified. It hasn't been authenticated according to the federal rules of evidence. This stuff is not admissible. Even these emails that Rudy Giuliani has really aren't admissible, but what we've got here, this is a signed document from the statement of directors for a company, a now failed company called Koyova, which was supposed to be some sort of social media endeavor that Hunter Biden was getting involved in. And it's got his signature on there from 2013. Now, separately, we've now been presented with another piece of internet evidence, which is the receipt from the laptop Fix-It place, and that's got Hunter Biden's signature on it as well. Now, again, even if these match perfectly, it's really not meeting the level of evidence until we can meet certain criteria. What can you say about some of the challenges that Rudy Giuliani and his team are going to have in turning these pieces of information into actual admissible evidence?
Well, first of all, if you can authenticate the signature, you can get a handwriting specialist and tell whether or not it's been superimposed by a photocopier or whatever. If they contain admissions against interest by Hunter Biden, that comes into evidence, whether he can testify to it or not. Okay, it will come into evidence, admissions against interest. So there are ways to get it into evidence, but who's going to do anything with the evidence? That's the point I was making earlier in this show, Jason, is that no one holds anybody accountable in Washington at a high level. Just doesn't happen because it's mutual assured destruction. We've seen it over and over and over again, And look, even Richard Nixon was let go for Watergate. So, and he turns out to be one of our better presidents by default, by the way. but this is Washington, D.C. This is why this country is 100% corrupt. 100% corrupt. I don't believe anything from anyone. I don't.
But isn't it true by that measure, they've spent the past 4 years going absolutely nuclear on Donald Trump. As far as mutually assured destruction goes, they've basically fired all their missiles at him, and he's now unveiled this arsenal. Donald Trump, it's amazing, for all the people who think he's corrupt, there's been a lot of people spending a lot of time trying to find something that they could sink him with, and so far nothing has worked. Isn't there a unique opportunity here, Larry, for Trump to strike back and maybe do something historic?
Well, I don't want to be a relativist here, but here they found something really major against Biden, and that's not going to take him out either. Let's be honest about it, okay? Not you, I'm just talking in general. You're a very honest person. But, if they could have taken Trump out, they would have, okay? And, there are things that are out there right now that could be a potential problem for him, particularly if he loses the election. I think they'll probably let him go and forget about it. But stuff that, with regard to Stormy Daniels and things like that, which, could continue to be pursued. But they're not major crimes or anything to that effect. I mean, who knows what they are. But nobody's perfect. These people have skeletons, and they haven't been able to take the president out, but the president's not been able to take them out. And as far as I'm concerned, whatever the president did or didn't do, he's far superior to the brain-dead Joe Biden, who's frankly a moron. I mean, you can't even write something without stealing it from other people. And if you want somebody like that in office, along with Kamala Harris, who's an evil witch, and they're going to take this country down the road of socialism and communism, then And I have a lot of friends that are getting out of this country. To be honest, they're ready to leave. I'm not going to leave. I'll fight to the very end. I will fight to the very end, and I will, with the grace of God, we'll make sure this doesn't happen. And that's what I write about.
That's what you write about, that's what you speak about, and that's what you bring lawsuits for. While we're still on the subject of morons in Washington, D.C., what can you say about Chris Wray's press conference of just a few minutes ago, where he says that Iran and Russia are trying to interfere in the U.S. election? I mean, isn't that like saying a particular person is trying to earn money or something? I mean, this is what these guys always do. They just interfere and...
There's two reasons for that. Christopher Wray is an establishment so-called Republican. He's afraid of his shadow. He was always out of his league, and he doesn't want to push too hard with the FBI agents. I mean, they have dirt on him too, I'm sure. He was a assistant U.S. attorney in Atlanta. I mean, the guy was basically a nobody. He was with a firm in Atlanta that whose name I forget right now. I went to Emory Law School, King and Spalding. But I think this is calculated, because by talking about the interference in the elections, now he's diverting attention from what Biden did, because the Democrats are saying, well, this is Russian misinformation and interference again. So he's playing the Biden game. He knows that he's in hot with Trump. If Trump wins, he knows he's going to be fired. So now he's thrown his lot with Biden. I think that's what it's about. But it doesn't surprise me if Iran and Russia are messing around in our elections. We mess around in their elections, their so-called elections. We mess around, all over the world. That's what we do. Okay, so the point is, shame on you if you can't stop it. And apparently, our hapless CIA and FBI, are unable to do that. But I don't buy it. I think it was timed to dignify what the Democrats are saying about Russian interference and misinformation on this Ukrainian scandal with Biden.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like the kind of a statement you could throw out at any particular time. The notion that Russia or Iran or China are engaged in endeavors to spy on the United States. I mean, I walk by the Iranian embassy over there, or the consulate, whatever it is, by the UN, and there's dudes in the driveway looking at me that there's obviously something sketchy going on over there, all kinds of...
They're the most evil regime on the planet, the Iranians. Okay, if they could kill us and annihilate us, they'd be happy to do it. And the irony is that they use the Arabs to do their dirty work. The Persian culture is much more sophisticated than the Arab world. You never heard of an Iranian with a suicide vest, okay? And the Ayatollahs, the supreme leaders, they manipulate their people. They'll let them get killed. But they'll use Hezbollah and they'll use Hamas, but they're not going to stick their neck out and get killed. They're the most evil people on the planet, the regime. I've brought cases against them. I have a case right now for the victims of Extortion 17. It wound up in front of, a hack judge in Washington, D.C. Colleen Kohler-Cattell. He's been sitting there for 7 years, over service of process issues. She's a Clinton appointee. So, but we're pushing it. And they are an evil, evil, evil regime. And, frankly, I've always hoped that they would provoke us and we would take them out, the regime, not the Iranian people. But we haven't had the guts to do that either.
Well, I can tell you that every person from Iran who I've ever met, which has always been in the United States, they share your sentiments. They don't like the government, and they go along with what you're saying. But it's interesting, this lawsuit about Extortion 17, you and I have spoken about that on the show before. We've had Charlie and Marianne Strange on the show. We had Mr. Hamburger, some of the Gold Star families. And basically the consensus among the families who've done more research into this really than anybody is that there was absolutely something happening from the top that allowed the destruction of that helicopter and the murder of all those servicemen and women. Sorry?
I think it was an inside job. I think somebody gave up the coordinates of that helicopter to the Taliban after Osama bin Laden was allegedly killed. I really don't think he was killed in that compound. I think he died before, and that was staged. I really believe that. But in any event,
But no, I don't want to
know?
move off of that yet, because the person and people who have the most to lose from the truth of that coming out are Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And it's just interesting to me that the Daily Beast played such an important role in revealing this Falconer's Benghazi story that ties Benghazi, the location of Osama bin Laden, and the destruction of Extortion 17 into one story that has this guy representing it, who to the general public, this guy is pretty outlandish. They worked with a journalist who had no credibility and seems to be lying. And then now today, even after everything points to this story being a ridiculous social engineering operation funneled through the Daily Beast, Barack Obama talks about this, smearing Trump at that Joe Biden rally in your beloved city of brotherly love. It doesn't seem like an accident to me, Larry.
Well, I love my heritage from Philadelphia, but it wasn't an accident that I escaped at age 18. Okay. And it's a very corrupt city. I've recently advocated, because it can be a great city. And it was a great city. And really, when you visit Independence Hall, it has much more significance and meaning than anything you'll see in Washington, D.C., frankly, which by and large looks like Disneyland. I mean, this is the real deal in Philadelphia. And I say, why don't we, the people, form our own government in Philadelphia and take the capital back to Philadelphia? Even the Supreme Court was there. Let's get the heck out of Washington. Let the criminals commit crimes against each other in the swamp. Let them have fun with each other. That goes for the media and for the government. And it's time for the people to take the country back. And that's why it's not just expression. I have concrete ways to do that. And so go out and get my book. It Takes a Revolution. Forget the scandal industry. It's coming out in 5 days. You can pre-order it at Amazon.com and the other booksellers. But here's the point, is that, Philadelphia is a symbol of liberty. It's a symbol of the greatest nation ever formed on earth. The document which moves me the most, and I love the Bible, okay, and I'm religious, but it even moves me more than the Bible, I have to say it, because God was behind it, is the Declaration of Independence, written by Thomas Jefferson. And, that's what we have to live by right now. And Jefferson, I tell you, he'd be in the streets right now. He'd be waging a revolution right now. He wouldn't tolerate this. Neither would the other founding fathers. They wouldn't tolerate it. They tried to placate King George III. They tried to give him everything that he wanted, and it wasn't enough for him. Instead, he took away our guns. He looted us. His troops raped our women and children, taxed us heavily. And finally, the American people said, I've had enough. I've had enough. And they waged a revolution. And you know what? But for the fact that I don't believe in violence, and but for the fact that I wouldn't advocate a violent revolution, frankly, the situation is worse today than it was under King George III. It's worse. At least King George III was an intelligent man. Look at these people that are out there now, head of the Democratic Party. It's become the party of the devil. These people just lie at will. I mean, it's so obvious they're lying. And they don't care. They don't care. But the American people are so poorly educated, a lot of them, that they'll take it hook, line, and sinker on all sides. And that's why we need to educate, and we need to take a stand, and we need to fight, because we are a whisper away from losing this country as we right now. Never been in this state before. And Trump is not the political messiah. I'm sorry, Sean Hannity. He's not. Okay. He's 1,000% better than Biden, more even than that. But he's not going to arrest the downward slide in this country. So we better do it now before it's too late. And that film, Dr. Strangelove? I know I'm rambling, yeah. Jake.
No, it's all right.
Where Higgins rides the bomb down at the end, with regard to Russia or the Soviet Union at the time. And he says, we might as well fight the Ruskies now. We got to do it eventually, right? Well, better to do it now before these people take control of our country. And they're on the verge of doing that in the next week and a half. They'll have total control, potentially, of this country.
I don't think so, Larry. Donald Trump is going to spank Joe Biden if he even lives until the debate tomorrow night. What do you expect to hear during the debate? They want to turn off Donald Trump's microphone.
As bad as Biden is, God forbid he dies, then you get Kamala Harris. I'm not saying...
But would that happen? That only happens if he's president. If he dies, don't they get somebody else to be the candidate?
Well, they would, but at this point, to throw up an African American woman would lose them all the African American support that they hope they get. But what I'm not saying that Trump's not going to win. What I'm saying is that right now the chance he will not, and we have to be prepared, even if he wins, to fight for this country. He needs our support, and we need to do it for ourselves. There is no political Messiah. There's no Moses. There's no Jesus. Okay, only God, and God helps those that help themselves. I believe that, and our founding fathers, did what they did with the divine providence. You can find that in all of the documents, but they did it themselves with God's divine providence, and we have to do it. And Donald Trump is not the be all and end all. I'm sorry, he's not. We know that. That was the case, Biden wouldn't be 10 points ahead right now. So the American people need to wake up, snap out of it. And we need to save this country. And we can save the president too. I want to save him. I've been trying to save him, despite, him not doing a good job of trying to save himself sometimes. But we are at that point, Jason, and people need to recognize it. So if the president wins, and I pray that he does, we can't just rock back, turn on Fox News, put our feet up on the coffee table, drink wine and beer and popcorn and figure everything's okay. It's not. So that's what I write about, and it takes a revolution. Forget the scandal industry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Larry, for one of the first times, I hope you're wrong. I do feel that Donald Trump is going to win. And then there's going to be chaos in the streets from all these Antifa maniacs and everybody that we've seen kind of tearing the whole place up. I want to ask you, in the last few minutes we've got here, Andrew Cuomo, speaking of...
Let me just interrupt you. I didn't say he's not going to win.
Yes.
Right now, he's not the odds-on favorite. I pray that he wins. But again, he's not the be-all and end-all. What do you do in 4 years? The demographics are changing. Every single year, there are more of these leftists that are being churned out of universities, illegal immigrants coming into this country, others. The demographics of someone like Trump winning again, it's not likely as of the current time. And therefore, we have to fight a revolution on all fronts right now. You can't just say Donald Trump's going to win, and let's forget it.
No. I agree. We've got to stay on top of this. I mean, one of the things that I've really wanted to try to pursue is find some lawyers or somehow somebody here in New York who can take on this disgusting guy, Andrew Cuomo, who is just acting like a dictator himself. It was interesting. The article I was looking for is that he's just had a press conference a little while ago where he's questioning the safety of this vaccine that Donald Trump has been talking about. And I know you've been on top of this social media censorship issue pretty much longer than anybody else. Why do you suppose, Larry, Andrew Cuomo is not being blocked from social media for questioning vaccine efficacy, which is a new thing that can get you kicked off?
Yeah, well, it's surprising that he's not in favor of that because the, quote, great Dr. Fauci, who's a complete criminal, in my opinion, he's the one who sent, according to my client, Judy Mikovits, the seeds of COVID-19 to the Wuhan lab. And then Obama appropriated $3.7 million for them to do research that we couldn't do here for legal reasons that the Chinese then engineered into a bioweapon. Why are they now dissing vaccines? And they should.
Well, it's a complicated story, though, Larry. And
they don't want there to be a cure. I don't think vaccines are going to be effective either, but they don't want there to be a cure. So they're saying is that the damage that Trump did through his alleged incompetence and lack of a coherent message will last, and the vaccines are not going to save you. And the president on the other side of the coin is saying, I've got the cure here, so vote for me. It's somewhere in between. It's not black or white like that. It's all a political game. The truth is only the ends justify the means. That's the Communist Manifesto.
That's right. Marxism loves that statement. But back to what you were saying about Dr. Mikovits, that's the video I was thinking about. And that video almost got my YouTube channel smashed. thanks to your help, we were able to deal with that. But of course, the Judy Mikovits
Thanks
video.
Thanks to my help, you also got it knocked off.
Yeah. Well, but that's the thing. So this Judy Mikovits video was taken down, according to YouTube, because we were questioning vaccine safety. Now, Alex Jones, I don't mean to bring up a sensitive subject, but he's been nice enough to allow us to post this on banned.video. Let's not say anything more about that. But now we see Andrew Cuomo doing basically exactly what we were. He's saying that the vaccine that Trump is talking about is no good. It's got to be a vaccine that he approves because he's now the king of New York, the dictator of the tri-state area. And unless he says the vaccine is safe and good, then it's okay to doubt it.
Well, maybe if the vaccine was financed by the mafia, he may feel differently, okay? He have mafia connections, okay? That's just a fact. We know that. And even Clinton, during the 92 campaign, made reference to Jennifer Flowers, my client, about Mario Cuomo, his dad, former governor, mafia connections. So, this is who the guy is. He's mafia. He's I'm not saying he is mafia, but he's got mafia connections. And that's who these people are.
Well, and that's why I made today's episode, the Bidens kind of a tip of the hat to the Sopranos. It's really no different. They're actually much more dangerous. And even Joe Biden has been endorsed by the SEIU union. And it was real interesting to see that at the outset of the COVID-19 lockdowns, there was a lot of work going on at the Javits Center to create an interim hospital that never did anything for anybody except it employed a lot of union carpenters and electricians who I bet will probably vote for Andrew Cuomo in the next thing that he runs for.
Well, yeah, the people don't know better. I mean, Cuomo, puts on his dad was a great speaker. Andrew Cuomo is a great speaker. So is Chris Cuomo. Okay, they're very good, in how they project the falsities that they put forth, but people need to see through that veneer. They're starting to see through it. I mean, how many people died in New York? Over 6,000 people in nursing homes. I mean, I've got a potential client there. We may bring a class action on that. It's a terrible situation. And these people, he says he sleeps well at night.
Unbelievable.
And they accuse Trump of killing people at the same time. It's despicable, Jason. And we know it's despicable. And this is the world we live in today. There's no such thing as truth. There's no such thing as fiction. It's whatever you say it is. And that's what our government is. Our government is dishonest to the core. We have no government. And I'm not just talking about the Democrats.
Yeah. And just before we close, Larry, I think you and I definitely agree on this, that although he is ineffective in serving justice, William Barr is definitely an expert lawyer. He is quite crafty with his lawfare, and he's able to do things from a political standpoint that make him look good. End of August, the Department of Justice issued this request for data from governors and states where COVID-19 orders resulted in the deaths of elderly in the nursing home. But this is not a criminal action. This is a CRIPA, a Civil Rights of Institutionalized Persons Act investigation. There's no criminal charges that go along with this. Isn't this just sort of like a show kind of a thing?
Everything Barr does is show. It's
Yeah.
all for show. And, we can see that. Look, just let's finish. We only have a minute left, but just ask
Sure.
yourself this question. Comey is not indicted. McCabe's not indicted. Strzok and Page are not indicted. Clapper's not indicted. Brennan is not indicted. Hillary Clinton's not indicted. Barack Obama's not indicted. Joe Biden's not indicted. His drug addict son, Hunter Biden's not indicted. Nobody will be indicted. That's the way it is in Washington. Protect each other. We're making money hand over fist. Why rock the boat? Let's just go on Fox News if you're conservative, MSNBC and CNN if you're leftist. Let's rake in more money for fundraising and everything else, and we'll all live fat and happy. And that's why I say, let's move the capital back to Philadelphia, let the criminals commit crimes with each other. And, there's some legal systems in the world. I remember at Duke University, I took a comparative course on the law, is that in some Scandinavian countries, they put rapists to live together in the same cell, let them deserve each other. That's what we should do. We've got people in government that are the equivalent of raping the American people, let them commit crimes against each other, and let's get the hell out of Washington, D.C. and form our own capital and take it back to Philadelphia. And let's have the leftists flee. Let's occupy it peacefully and legally and reestablish a government by and for the people, because we don't have it now. We don't. And I don't care whether it's Democrat or Republican, we don't have it.
Well, hopefully people will forget the scandal industry, because it does take a revolution. I'm personally more for a peaceful revolution. I just not into getting shot or beaten up. But, you know, I also wonder.
So am I. That's why I wrote it, because I want to prevent all hell from breaking loose.
Yeah.
That's why. I'm not advocating it.
Absolutely. And I want people to also visit freedomwatchusa.org, Larry. They can check out your podcast, your blog, all the things that you're posting on there, keep up on the cases that you're involved in. And thank you so much for bringing Sheriff Joe Arpaio onto the show last week. You and the sheriff have started a new movement to support law enforcement in the United States, something that we really need. People can read more about that on freedomwatchusa.org. Any closing words, Larry, before we wrap it up for tonight?
My closing words is that God is with us, Jason. He's with us, whether you're Jewish, Christian, or legitimate religion. And he's with us, okay? And he's destroyed civilizations over and over again throughout time. I don't think he can't do it here. So we need to adhere to the word of God. We need to follow what we believe he wants us to do. And right now, he wants us to put our foot down, not put our head in the sand. And he wants us to fight for our freedom and our liberty. And there is no Messiah other than his son. And no Yahweh, Father, other than him. And people need to remember that. And, you know, whether you believe in Jesus or God or not, you can live by the same principles either way. But that's what it's about. And that's what our founding fathers were about. And that's why they succeeded. But when you start lying and cheating and stealing and looting and burning and killing, you know, that's Sodom and Gomorrah. God took care of business. He said, don't take anything for granted. He said, if you don't set the right tone, we're not going to be able to save this country.
Well, Larry, I hope that it doesn't turn to that. I know a lot of people here remain hopeful in the comments, as do I. Always appreciate your insights, particularly the stuff we were talking about with all the legal developments. We're going to have to see what happens. We got the debate tomorrow, very likely more information coming from Rudy Giuliani and this Hunter Biden crackhead laptop. I hope that people will visit freedomwatchusa.org and support Larry and his team at Freedom Watch. We don't have a functional justice department, so we need lawyers like Larry and law firms like Freedom Watch to make sure that justice is served. And I hope that people will support Crowdsource the Truth. I can't bring you great guests like Larry Klayman without your support and sponsorship. Please visit subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Become a sponsor. Help me complete this dedicated server. I'm beta testing it right now, Larry. Everybody's deleting us off of every platform, so I'm creating my own platform to host the sponsor-exclusive videos, and it'll be ready very soon. Thanks, everybody, for watching tonight. I'll see you tomorrow.